Welcome to the High Adventure Scouting Podcast. This is the source for all things high adventure for scouts, scouters, and anyone else interested in promoting high adventure trips for our youth. You can find all kinds of great high adventure options for your scouts at highadventurescouting.com. We are constantly updating the list of cool trips, and we want your input on your best trip. Welcome, high adventure enthusiasts. We're excited, as always, to highlight a high adventure base on this edition of the High Adventure Scouting Podcast. Today, we're joined by Samuel Ahlstrom, Senior District Executive for the Pathway to the Rockies Council. And we're going to discuss the Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base. I'm excited about hearing about this. Sounds like a great place. Samuel, thanks for joining us today on the High Adventure Scouting Podcast.
Absolutely, Rob. Thanks for inviting me on, and I'm excited to talk about Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base as well.
I'm excited to hear about it. So, now, I tell everybody I'm a little far out of your area. I'm in the St. Louis area where I come from, and the purpose of the podcast is kind of give the listeners a little more information about your program offerings. Many outside the regional area might not even know you exist. So, I'll have a few questions, but I just kind of want you to give us a kind of a 30,000 foot view of your programs and what you have going on, and we'll just kind of go from there. Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. Well,
Awesome.
Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base is located in the wet mountain range of the Rocky Mountains, and that's kind of in the southern part of Colorado. So the nearest large city that we have to us is Pueblo, Colorado. And I really enjoy Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base because for me, it's a true high adventure base. I think we are one of the highest in elevation, if not the highest elevated camp in the country. We are at 8,700 feet plus. That's where our base camp is at. But we have programs that get you well above 10,000 feet in elevation, going all the way up sometimes to 14,000 feet. So that's kind of the big view of it. The program pushes people. I'll tell you what, it is a difficult program, and it's not because of the activities. It is because of that elevation. We got a lot of folks coming from the plains, coming from Texas, coming from lower parts of the United States. And I tell them, you got to come prepared. You got to come prepared. And that altitude just really kicks their butt. But it's a lot of fun because it really pushes you to your limits, and you have to be hyper aware of where you are at physically and mentally in order to be successful in your trip to Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base. So that's kind of that big overview of who we are and what we do.
That's awesome. Well, that the altitude was something that we really worked on when we went to Philmont, and we kind of along the way we went further and further because where we're about near where I live is about near sea level, and that's where a lot of people live, and it's 80 even at 8,700 feet. That's quite a bit. That's quite a bit different than what most people have access to.
Yeah. I mean, Philmont, if my memory serves me right, their base camp is just shy of 7,000 feet in elevation. So you're essentially adding another 2,000 feet of elevation when you come to Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base just for the base camp. And I joke around with a lot of people who choose to come and sign up with us or who are interested in it. We'll talk about Philmont, and I'll say, that's a good start, but this is going to push you. This is much.
I saw
difficult.
that on the website. I saw that on the website. It was that's Philmont. That's a good start. Yeah, it's good training for this. So
exactly,
sounds like it.
Yeah, and no knocking to Philmont because they have a wonderful program, great history. We're just a different animal, and you have to be aware of that before showing up.
Exactly. Now, for those who've been to Philmont, just to give you an idea, the Tooth of Time, which is kind of the bedrock and what you see at Philmont pretty much the whole time you're there, is just at 9,000 feet. So you're almost at that level just in base camp.
Yes.
So that's just a good comparison. So, well, let's jump into the kind of the program offerings and maybe some of the things that units will come to your program to be involved in each year.
Yeah, we have a wide range of offerings for activities. Some of those activities include doing some unique shooting sports programs. We do a lot of climbing and rappelling. We also have some mountain biking, really great mountain biking in the area, especially being in the Rocky Mountains. Another thing that a lot of people enjoy doing is fishing. We are located right nearby a reservoir called Lake Isabel, and it is a beautiful place to go do some fishing for a day. And then the big one that uh, everybody comes to do with us is the backpacking trips. That's kind of our
Right.
big focus is get you out in the backwoods of the Rocky Mountains to enjoy a beautiful Rocky Mountain backpacking trip. And some of those trips, they're going to be some easy ones. When I say easy, it's relative.
Hmm.
And we're talking around 10 miles, for a round trip over the course of 2 days, one night, to a much larger 20-mile trip that you're doing over 3 days, two nights. And you're going to be summiting a peak that's over 13,000 feet. So we have some really awesome high adventure stuff with that. And I think one of the pinnacles that it just makes the trip that much better and it's a lot of fun without a lot of stress. Everybody who comes to Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base gets to enjoy a whitewater rafting trip down the Arkansas River, which is one of the most beautiful parts of
Hmm.
Colorado. It's so great. And especially if you can get it on a year where it's running high and fast. Yeah, you really get to ride that raft and have a lot of fun.
We stopped on our way back from Philmont. We actually stopped and did a trip down the Arkansas, just as a last hurrah for our guys which were aging out, and it was awesome.
Mhm,
And some of the quote whitewater we've done in the past has basically been a canoe trip in a big raft.
mhm.
That and that was a pretty cool trip, I thought. We got pretty wet. We had some challenges, and that's kind of what you want. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and the group that we work with to do the whitewater rafting, they are some of the best professionals you will ever work with when it comes to outdoor adventure. They give you a really good understanding of what it means to be an outdoor adventure provider. Just top notch group, and every single time scouts come back from those trips, they're really impressed and really happy that they were able to go on that trip with that outfitter.
Well, that's awesome. Well, that's a fun part of that. Just it's just different than what most people have access to. Where I live, we have canoeing. We don't have whitewater
Mhm.
really, so
Yeah.
that's something different. So, uh, is there a do most groups come in and do a certain thing every day, like for 6 or 7 days, or however long the trek is, or do are they able to kind of pick and choose and design their own? What's the setup of your program?
That's a really great question. This is actually something that we've changed and adjusted. People who have come to Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base in years past have come and participated in a program that's really open. You show up and you kind of choose your own adventure. However, as we know, with COVID-19 and the pandemic, we've had to make some changes to programs across the board, and so we've actually moved to a newer model that's very similar to what we see at other high adventure bases across the country, including Z Base, at a council level, and then at a national level as well with Philmont and C Base. So what you do is your group chooses a specific trek that is outlined day by day, the activities that you will be doing. So each one of those activities is listed on our website. And if you go to the website, it's going to tell you with this specific trek, you're going to do this activity on day one, this activity on day two, and so on and so forth. So you choose what you want to do in advance, and then you get to prepare leading up to camp by doing physical training and whatever else you need to do to be able to show up to camp prepared to have a successful trek experience.
Great. What's the most popular option? I mean, I'm looking at your website right now, and of course, these options could change as time goes on, depending on what programs are popular. But
Hmm.
I'm looking at the gosh, the advanced one,
Our the
What you
goat,
call the goat trek.
yeah,
Holy crap! I'm not sure
greatest
I
of
could
all
do that.
time trek. Yeah, the goat trek.
Hmm.
I personally, that's one of my favorite ones, the goat trek,
Is that
and
right?
that's because I'm a big backpacker. I love to go hiking and backpacking, but one of our favorites is the Eagle Trek, and the Eagle Trek is heavily focused around fishing. So you do fly fishing, you do a regular rod and reel experience. We also have some other activities that we throw in for you as well, like we do a specialty shooting sports day, and then we also do some water sports with you as well there. But the really cool one that I think is getting people super excited about that trek is that we send you out at the end of the week on a backpacking experience. And one of the places we like to go, it has a lake at the base of a peak. And depending on what your group wants to do, some of the group may want to just stay and fish at that lake all day on that second day after you've camped out overnight. And another part of the group may want to go summit that 13,000 foot plus peak that's overlooking that lake. And so you're able to have the best of both worlds, and it's really flexible for your group. That's one of the ones that we hear a lot of positive feedback about.
Well, that sounds great because they're all just every one that you have on there looks like it's just kind of builds up to whatever you want to do. So there's a lot of variety in each current trek,
Yeah.
and I would imagine the goat trek, greatest of all time, is mainly for uh, well conditioned scouts and
Yes.
leaders.
Yes, that's exactly what it is, and I really like that you were able to point out that it kind of builds upon one another.
Mhm.
This is exactly why we've built our treks like this. We have had feedbacks from lots of units, lots of adult leaders who have said they would have liked some more time to prepare to go out on their trip, on their backpacking trip, or whatever large part of the trek that they have going on. They want some of that time to prep for it. And that's why we built it like that, because we want everyone who comes to Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base to have a successful experience. But the only way that's possible is if you take the time to acclimate at base camp, doing some activities that will push you a little bit more each one of those days until at the end of the week, you can go. And I know you probably have quite a few people who listen to this podcast and probably processing through their heads thinking, oh, well, it won't be a problem for my kids. I'll tell you what, it will be. Because the only time I've ever had problems with scouts or even adult leaders who come and participate, it's with those groups that have told me over the phone,
Mhm.
not my kids, not my group. We're good. You know what? You may be good at Philmont, and you may be good at your local high adventure base, but Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base, just because we are in the Rocky Mountains, it puts it on a whole nother level.
Exactly, and that's really the most recent Philmont trip we went on. I wasn't worried about the conditioning. I was worried about the acclimating because we're at near sea level, if you
Yeah.
or maybe 100 feet, 200 feet, I don't know, whatever St. Louis is. So we didn't have a lot of experience like that. So we drove out. So as we drove out, we went up as we got there,
Mhm.
and by the time we got to base camp, we were a little more acclimated and we didn't have any problems.
Yeah.
So that was the one thing I was really worried about, and being even higher elevation. It looks like kind of the program offerings. That's kind of what you guys do is do some of the more base campy type activities, or maybe a little bit before you head on to the backpacking and summiting, the 14,000 foot uh, peaks.
Yeah.
So that's good. And that looks very good planned in your program. So
Yeah.
I like that. So
You make a very good point, Rob, about your guys' experience going out to Philmont and taking that time, getting to camp and using that time to acclimate yourselves. I know a lot of people that they just want to drive out to us in one day. They're coming from Texas, they're coming from Kansas, and they say, oh, it's fine. It's an 8 hour, 10 hour trip. We'll be able to get there. No problem. Oh, I know you could get there, no problem. But the problem then becomes that you showed up in one day and you didn't take that time to acclimate. And so one of the things that a lot of people want to think about when they're considering coming to Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base is tacking on a couple of days at least before arriving at the base camp where you can take that time to acclimate, whether that's stopping in Colorado Springs for a night, which is above 6,000 feet in elevation,
Hmm.
or stopping off at Pueblo, which is just shy of 5,000 feet in elevation. There are several places in Colorado that you could come to, camp out, spend the night, and enjoy some of the local activities that are going on there, and then come up to base camp the following day. That's going to make the experience a lot better. It does add to your trip. But if you want to do the trip right, if you want to keep everybody safe and healthy, that's one of the things you absolutely need to take into consideration.
Hmm. Yeah, the last thing I would want to do is ruin one of the members' trips because of that.
Yeah.
I mean, such a small thing that you can mitigate by acclimating. So I know we spent a lot of time on that, but I think that's extremely important for leaders listening to this podcast and considering anything at a higher elevation to do that. And the last thing you want to do is spend all that time preparing and then one of your members gets sick
Yeah.
because it will happen. Especially a lot of
Absolutely.
us live at land. Uh, Most of us are at sea level or not much higher than that.
Yeah.
So we don't have that. Those of you in Colorado kind of have that built into you. So
We do.
um, now, are there any other options or any other things at? I mean, it's basically the Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base. These are the only programs. There's no like summer camp at this location. Is that correct, or am I reading that wrong?
Well, great question on that. That is something that also changed recently. You know, with everything happening in the Boy Scouts of America and whatnot, our council had to take a hard look at how we wanted to ensure the financial stability of the council going forward, while also being able to continue to provide great programs here in Southern Colorado. And so we have actually moved our high adventure operation from its former location near Salida, Colorado, down to near Rye, and it's now located on San Isabel Scout Ranch, which this is kind of a full circle thing. We had high adventure dating back into the 80s, and we moved that off property in 2004, and we're now bringing it back in. And the way that we've had it set up is we have the high adventure folks. They're in a separate part of camp that's segregated from the resident camp. But one of the things that I found, I thought it was going to be an issue because I've seen this at other camps. I've found that there are a lot of units who are really excited about this change because they're able to bring their whole unit to camp
Right.
together, but it is a very separate and distinct experience. I'm sure, Rob, you're aware of many camps that offer a high adventure component along with merit badges. And I think that's a great way to introduce some of those, less junior scouts into
Hmm.
what high adventure scouting can be. But if you're wanting a high adventure base, high adventure experience, whatever you want to call it, you really need to have them separated. And so we're
Right.
able to do that and we're able to accommodate that because of the way that the property is set up. Now, we do share some meal times and we do share a shower house. But otherwise, our programs are completely separate, which makes it really great for those large units, which we have many of them who come every year. And they have, 30 kids total that are participating at the camp. And we have 5 to 10 who are over at the high adventure base, and the rest of them go participate in the resident camp side of things. So there is the ability to bring a whole unit to one property and one location for a week, but you don't have to have your older kids integrated with those younger kids for that entire week.
That's a great option, and a lot of times you don't have that availability to kind of have separate facilities.
Yeah.
Every council's a little different, but that's a cool thing to have. We all know the major high adventure bases around the country, and they offer some awesome programs. Have you been searching for a cool alternative from your typical high adventure trip? As a scout leader, I want to give our scouts some great alternatives. You need to check out highadventurescouting.com. You'll find information on over 30 different council high adventure bases in 24 states. Maybe you're looking for a do-it-yourself option and need some ideas. Maybe you've taken a great trip and you want to share your good fortune with your fellow scouts and scouters. Just send us the details and we'll publish your trip. Whatever your interest, highadventurescouting.com is the one-stop shop for all things high adventure. That's highadventurescouting.com. Do you have units that will come to San Isabel Scout Ranch just as a typical summer camp program,
Mhm.
but have so many scouts that want to do high adventure? Do you integrate them together for that week as from different units, or do you have provisional options? How do you do that?
Yeah, so it's been really cool as we've been sorting all of this out to see that we can provide units with more options based off of what their needs are. We have a lot of units that come to us and say, we want to have our entire troop, regardless of their age. We want them all together. We don't care that they're participating with high adventure, and we don't care that these younger ones are participating with resident camp stuff. We want them together camping for the week. That's great. We can do that. But we also have a number of units come to us and say, no, they need to be separated. We want them to be separated so those older kids have that high adventure experience without having to worry about the younger kids getting into trouble and stuff like that. And so we can provide that flexibility for them to be able to do that. With regards to provisional, at the moment we don't have a provisional program. However,
Mhm.
if there are people who are interested but they don't have the adult leadership to do that, we are taking essentially a wait list. And as we get more units that are signing up, we're connecting units with one another to have a conversation as to whether or not they would be okay integrating those provisional scouts into the other unit for that week. So it is possible, but you just need to reach out to us at our council office and or even through our website, which we've got a chat function through there. We'd be happy to
Mhm.
answer those questions and get you on that wait list to get things sorted out.
That's great. That's something that if we have in our troop, we try to go to two different high adventure opportunities each year. If we have spots open, we open that up. We have four other troops in close proximity,
Mhm.
and generally we'll have one or two that from those troops that want to come with us. I'm all for that, and
Yeah.
since I'm the committee chair for the troop, I kind of push that because I think that's important to give them the opportunity to do that.
I also
And
think
so,
it's really cool to allow our scouts to work with others who are outside of where we are from. You know,
mhm,
our scouting experiences, while we all are registered members to the same organization, our experience is very unique. I've been running camps for over a decade now, and I've done it across multiple states. And there are things in each state that I've been in that are really cool and really unique that I love being able to participate in. But if I hadn't had a chance to integrate in those other states, I never would have known it. And that's one of the other reasons why I really like that, because it does give those scouts a chance to see how things are done differently around the country, and they can make decisions about, well, is that something we really want to do? Is that something that we want to bring into our program? Maybe it is better, maybe it's not better, maybe you have a better way of doing it. But it just provides some more collaboration and I think some more unity to our organization as a whole.
exactly, I would agree with that. Sure. The On the website, it looks like each crew you have a max size of 14.
Yeah.
Is there a minimum size of a crew that you would take out that you'd like to I say I want to keep it between, 8 and 14, or what's the minimum that you guys usually look for
So the
size wise?
minimum is all going to be based around youth protection guidelines. So we're going to need those two adult leaders who are 21 years of age and up to start off with, and then we need those two youth participants as well. So that's kind of going to be our base to begin with, but otherwise, no, there isn't a minimum on that. And with regards to those maximums, those are based around our permits to be able to go backpacking. Our permits
Right,
allow
I
us,
figured.
yeah, they
Okay.
allow us to have 15 people. We provide a guide for you. So that's one person. I, I can speak English. It's one
Yeah, that's all
person.
right. I knew what you were talking about. That's good.
It's so that takes away one person. That puts us at 14. So that number, it's a pretty solid
Yeah.
number. We have no flexibility on that because it all goes back to um, us being, good citizens of our country and following the laws that have been set down. And so we want to stay on good terms with the Forest Service so we can continue to offer these great, exciting adventures to everyone.
Exactly. Now, do the adults have to go through a wilderness first aid, or is that something that the guide would cover? Those kind of things.
Yeah, so our all of our guides complete wilderness first aid training. So when you come to Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base, we don't require any adults to already have that. However, I do highly recommend that at least one member of your unit has gone through that training because having extra eyes on a scene when something happens and those eyes having been trained, that will help greatly. But we do have a lot of emergency procedures in place. One of the best things that we have for our program is we use the spot locators. If anything happens, we're able to send
Hmm.
out an SOS call, not just to our base camp, but we can send it out to search and rescue to be able to come and help us as well. But having that extra set of eyes would be wonderful.
Well, that's great. What kind of staff do you guys have during the season? I assume they're at least 18 years old, but what's the typical staff makeup? Where do they come from? Um, that kind of stuff.
So staff makeup for Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base has been really unique over the past couple years. And when I say unique, it's not a negative thing at all. I've just never experienced it like this in my 10 years plus of running camps. And that is it's a lot of folks who are outdoor adventure enthusiasts that have great resumes when it comes to that, and they have very little scouting experience. And especially this past season, it was really awesome to see these staff members who maybe had interacted with scouts a handful of times. Most of them had never been registered in the organization. They got super excited about scouting. And a lot of that went back to the great units that we have coming to Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base year after year. But what's really cool about having these individuals who are outside of our organization providing the leadership and the trek guiding experience is they provide a different perspective on things than what we are used to within the Boy Scouts of America. So you mentioned it, Rob. All of them, they're going to be 18 years of age and up. We've already talked about their training that we put them through, which is the wilderness first aid training. And then they have every single one of them just a massive resume of experience, whether it be personal or professional, of being in the backwoods, not just in the Rocky Mountains, but you name it, they've been there. These guys have tons of experience.
That's great to hear. That's more beneficial than having been in scouts.
Hmm.
Not necessarily, but that's neat that they're coming from a different perspective. So,
Yeah.
what's the typical cost for per crew member?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, I'm sure it's different, but what's the kind of the per person cost you guys usually look at?
So right now, for all of our treks, we have the same price, and that is our regular price is $550 per person. That's your full week of your experience on whichever trek you sign up for. And that also covers your meals for the entire week, including trail meals. So you don't need to worry about bringing that stuff with you. We also can provide backpacking tents for you when you go on your backpacking trek. So if you don't have one with you already, you don't need to stress about buying it. If you want to bring your own, you're more than welcome to. And then we also provide you with fuel and a stove to be able to cook. Everything else that you want to look at bringing with you is you want to bring a backpack, nothing too large. Most of our trips are just going to be overnighters. One day, you're out on the trek, you spend the night. Second day, you're heading back from the trek. So, I even have had kids show up with school backpacks. While that's not ideal, you can do that because
Mhm.
it's such a short trip that you're heading out on. But $550 is what's going to get you started there. And then we do run a discount that will give you $35 off per person, so long as you register before February 1st. If you get registered before February 1st, you're going to get that nice $35 discount per person, and that'll save you quite a bit of money.
That's I've paid for, and people have listened to this know that I've gone to every high adventure BSA high adventure base and
Mm-hmm.
a couple council bases, and so I've spent a fair amount of money on myself and my son going to all the, but
Mm-hmm.
these were experiences, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But $550 is pretty that's pretty economical.
Mm-hmm.
That's for that kind of geography.
Mm-hmm.
So where do most of the units come from? Do they come from in the geographic area around Colorado, or do you have units come from further away?
We have most of our units coming from the Midwest. We've got a lot of folks coming from Nebraska, Kansas, Texas. We have a few that come from New Mexico every year. That's where we mainly have folks coming from. Over this past year, though, we were really excited to have 2 units come from Illinois. We really loved having those folks come out and spend a week with us. And 2 years ago, we had a group from New York. They came and spent a week with us as well. So we have a draw from a specific region, and mainly that has a lot to do with how conveniently close we are to them. But getting here is really not that big of a deal because we're located fairly near to a couple of reasonably sized airports. Denver International, obviously, one of the larger airports in the country, and you can usually get some decent flights into there. But then also going into Colorado Springs. Southwest has just started operating into Colorado Springs now. And so that provides some additional options outside of United and Frontier that also operate into Colorado Springs. So those are a couple of places for you to look at if you're coming from a little bit further away. And then most of the units that decide to fly in, they opt to rent vehicles because if you're going to fly into Colorado, you probably want to go experience some of the other stuff that we have here. We have several national parks that are in the area. Rocky Mountain National Park, obviously, very famous for the elk herd that we have up there. But one of the other cool ones, the least visited national park in the National Park Service, is located in Colorado as well. And that's Black Canyon National Park. So there's some really great things that you can go see outside of Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base when you come. You just want to rent a vehicle to be able to go and experience those with your unit.
Now you said something about the discounts usually come before February 1st.
Mhm.
Is there a how early do units realistically need to really inquire about getting a spot?
Yeah,
How
definitely.
early in the year?
I know that's absolutely a concern. The great news is the majority of our registrations typically happen January and February of the year in which the treks will happen. So if you're looking to book
Okay.
for next year and it's September, October, November, don't stress. You're fine. You've got time to be able to make your plan, sit down with the unit, make sure that you've got your finances all set up and ready to go, and you have a plan for that. Make sure that this is what everybody's really interested in doing, and then pull that trigger come December, January, and you'll be able to get a spot without too much stress.
That's good. That's good. So I've kind of run through a whole bunch of stuff, and we've covered so much ground.
Mhm.
What did we leave out? What questions did I not ask you that you think are important to talk about Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base?
One of the things that's unique to doing any sort of camp in Colorado is we are considered a child care facility, which means we go through an extra level of inspection outside of the NCAP accreditation program, which to me says a lot about who we are and what we're expected to do. No knocks on any other high adventure base, but that's just one of those other things that you can rest assured, in spite of the fact that it is a very dangerous experience when you do high adventure, especially when you're going at the elevations that we're at. You can know that the individuals that we are employing, they've gone through rigorous trainings that are required by the BSA and the state. They are prepared to be able to handle anything that comes their way. There's also an extra level of expectation when it comes to medical, which once again goes back to the fact that coming to high adventure base at our altitude it's very dangerous, and having that extra uh, security of an individual who has more experience than what would be at some other camps, you can know that it'll be a great experience, it'll be a safe experience, it'll be a fun experience. And so that's one of the things that I'm really proud of, is that licensure that we get through our state. um, and yeah, so that's one of the other things that I think is really important for people to know about. Yeah.
Awesome. We've covered a lot of ground. I think we've kind of given a good overview of your programs as they are, and as we'll probably have some type of update later in the year about kind of what's coming up, any changes that are happening. But
Mhm.
Samuel, I appreciate you joining us today and kind of giving us an overview of Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base.
Absolutely. This is great. I love talking about Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base. I love talking camps and high adventure program. And Rob, I really appreciate what you've done to be able to provide this to so many scouts and scouters. And I know this has been a labor of love, and I hope you just keep it up.
Well, I like hearing about all these high adventure bases myself, so it is a little selfish, and I take this back to my troop, and one of the high adventure bases that we feature a lot. We mentioned Z Base. We had a group go there this summer because the director kept pushing me. Well, when are you going to come? Well, give me time. So,
Mhm.
but uh, but I want to thank Samuel Ahlstrom, Senior District Executive for the Pathway to the Rockies Council and the Rocky Mountain High Adventure Base, for joining us today. Now,
Thank-
you can get more information on their programs at rockymountainscouts.org/RMHAB, or just go to Rocky Mountain Scouts and search for High Adventure. Thanks for joining us today, and remember to tell your friends about this podcast. You can find us online at highadventurescouting.com, on Facebook or Instagram. If you have any questions or ideas for future podcasts, just email us at info@highadventurescouting.com. This podcast and website are independent and not affiliated with any youth organization. Happy High Adventure! This has been a production of High Adventure Resources.